Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning. Let me know if the volume is okay, if you guys can hear me well. Yeah, we've got already 27 people, even before time. I'm a little early, so just wait a little bit for more people to come aboard and talk about the title of the live stream and what I think is happening. So let's see who's here. Looter 92. Perhaps the repo crisis has been caused by Deutsche Bank bailing out of Wall Street. Maybe, I'm not sure. Uh, Only my POV says perhaps because Deutsche Bank is objecting to the global revaluation. Yeah, there's a lot of different. Hi, Steve Ince. Nice to see you here. Hi, everyone. Forgive me if I don't see everyone or every question. I think the repo, there's a lot of explanations about the repo. I've read many of them. The latest one that I saw is that prior to the Fed starting QE in 2009, banks never kept excess reserves with the Fed, and now they do. And the Fed pays a higher rate than the Fed funds for them to keep money with the Fed. So one explanation is that the banks want to keep the money, the cash with the Fed, and don't want to lend it in the repo market. But whatever it may be, things are not great in my opinion. So let's. There's quite a few people here now. So the title of my live stream is unusual. It says, "Could Anglo-American mayhem trigger a currency collapse?" So what do I mean by Anglo-American? Well, I think it's the special relationship between the U.S. and the UK, and that's been going on, in my opinion, since World War One, and especially after World War II as well. And if you look at the recent history, a lot of things that happened in the US happened in the UK. For example, in the early 80s, we had the Thatcher-Reagan revolution, so to speak, right? Now we've got a lot of political division, represented in the UK by the Brexit situation, and in the US by Trump. The people who love Trump and the people who hate Trump. Everything is so divided. And I usually don't cover politics. I think a lot of it is, how can I say, theater. But I think we're getting to a point where things are getting out of hand, and it could affect currencies, fiat currencies, because currencies are nowadays supported. They're not backed by anything. They're backed by faith and credit, or the full faith and credit in these governments. And if there's mayhem, political mayhem in the US and the UK, I think it could be very serious. So that's, you can ask me questions about that, what I think. I'm going to look at some questions here. Okay. Crypto Santa from Australia. Repo mayhem is by design. Not sure. Could be. All banks are insolvent. Yeah, I agree. Hybrid parts. Hi, hybrid parts. Isabella, hi. Parlando, is Glint Gold insolvent? Well, no. First of all, it's Glint Pay, the name. Anyway, but you could call it Glint Gold, but it's not Glint Gold. What's happened is the has gone under a fine. The administrators out and said that triggered by a dispute with a secured creditor. And we haven't heard more, because in the UK, when a firm is under administration, the directors, CEOs, they can't comment because they're not running the firm. But the last we heard is that they should have the funds finished tomorrow. On Friday, the administrators saying that they haven't found any problems, that the funds of the UK till, and they're going to finish it tomorrow. So that's what's happening with Glint. Dan Gombert, thank you for the super chat donation. I appreciate that. So I'm going to try to see more questions. I hope that answers the question about glint. Unfortunately, they can't say anymore. I think a lot will come out. What do I think about? I've told people in the past, it's a great idea, in my opinion, having being able to do that with gold. Even though I prefer to have most of my gold physically in my possession, right? I got a glint card last year, and they contacted me, and I've been in contact with them, and they gave me a promo code, and they came in. They started in the U.S. end of July. So I think the technology of these cards, not just for glint, for gold, but like Revolut, different currencies to make it cheaper when you go abroad is great. But would I keep all my money in those cards and the technology? No, because those kind of things can happen. I still believe for saving, yeah, you need to be careful, and you have to try to cut counterparties. But we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next few days. Let's have a look. Yeah, so let me go a little more further into what I think is happening. You know, why the title of my video is Currency Collapse, Anglo-American Mayhem. Well, because currency collapse is basically hyperinflation, right? You destroy the currency. And Paul Flamand, thank you for the super chat donation. Thank you. So there's a book here called When Money Dies by Adam Ferguson, and I recommend it. It was written in 1975. This is the 2010 edition. He talks about the Weimar hyperinflation. And I went through today, as you can see, the little yellow stickers. There's a lot going on in Germany, and it wasn't just in 1923 that things collapsed. You have to go back to like the beginning of World War I, and the fact that instead of taxing the public to pay for the war, the Germans went on a borrowing spree, right? They issued a lot of debt. The other thing they did, the German mark and the currency had to have, since 1875 until 1915, I think, had a 30% backing of gold. And that was taken away. And they started just issuing debt to pay for the war. And that sounds familiar. That's QE, right? The gold backing was taken away in 1968 for the dollar. I know a lot of people think that the U.S. went off a gold standard, and it did domestically in 33, but there was a law that kept, I think, was it 20% gold backing or 40? I'm not sure. But in 1968, that was stripped away. So the dollar became totally unbacked by gold in 1968. And if you look at the national debts in the US and all around the world, but especially in the US, since the early 70s, it's been going up and up. So that's the other aspect about Weimar Germany is that the Emperor Kaiser Wilhelm abdicated when Germany lost, fled to Holland, and Germany became a republic, and it was a total chaos, political vacuum, and that didn't help either. So it was years of deficit spending to pay for the war, then political mayhem, and all of a sudden, the currency started dropping massively against other currencies. Inflation started picking up, and it was only in 1923, really, that it really picked up, the hyperinflation. People lost confidence. So that's what I'm trying to say. I've been following a little bit what's happening in the US with this I've heard people call it hoax 2.0 about the Ukraine and the impeachment. They want to impeach Trump, even though the biggest scandal, in my opinion, is the fact that it looks like Biden, and I knew about the Biden story years ago. Biden basically helped his son make millions in the Ukraine, right? That's what the story is about. But the Democrats are trying to turn it around. So there's so much. And I listened to what's his name, Rudy Giuliani on Fox News. He was being interviewed with other people, and he was calling someone else. And I'm not having a go at him. I'm just saying that the language and the animosity is huge. He was calling someone a moron, an idiot, and a liar. Here in the UK is the same thing. There's so much division between, the people who want to leave by October 31st, and then the political establishment is totally against leaving. They don't want to have an election. They don't want the UK to leave. I think it's a total mess in both countries. The US, maybe what I've heard as well, like listening to people like True News, is that whatever happens in 2020 in the election, there will be a lot of unrest, whoever wins, even though I think Trump will win. So that's why I think we could be moving towards this kind of loss of confidence in the currency. And if you look back historically, has been country politically, if you strip out the Civil War, of course, and even then it was relatively stable, even though the North and South were fighting. You have to go back 230 years for instability, and the same thing in the UK. And I think now we're at a juncture that we haven't seen in centuries. And I think that, makes me about it. I just think people that how it could be really bad for currencies, as the dollar is the reserve there to escape in terms of fiat currencies. Even the euro would get hurt. All the currencies would get hurt, and that's why I'm holding on as much as I can to my gold and silver. Yes, the price moves are a bit. When you frustrated when you see gold and silver get hit, you need to think about your picture. That's the way I feel. And the political arena getting very much like Germany post World War I, in my opinion, even though it's not exactly the same thing, but it's the instability and the political vacuum, right? So enough of me speaking. Let me try to get some of your questions. Sanjit Niyogi, hi Mario, hope you're doing good. Things are not dim in India. Gold is going high. The economy is a bit slowing down, but nothing to panic. And people on Narendra Modi, that's the prime minister. Well, if gold is going up, that's not a good thing for the Indian currency. That means the currency. Objective reality waiting to happen. What, glint? Yeah, are you in the US or in the UK? Objective reality. In the US, it's still running. It's not under administration. I think we should find out very soon what's going on. On Friday, the administrator said that there's no problems with the reconciliation of the funds so far. The funds are there and the gold. So, but I don't know any more than you. The best thing to do is to go on the Glint page site. They're updating there. Let's have a look. Observatory, are you familiar with the memoirs, of former chair of the BIS, Zylstra? You should look into it. He says interesting things about gold. I'm kind of roughly familiar with that. I'll have to look into that. Thank you. He was the Dutch central banker, I think, wasn't he? Cyrus Kadrezer, well, in the UK, we say 2112. I guess you mean December 21st, 2020, the next great conjunction. Oliver Bismarck was right about the significance of USA speaking English. Well, you know, that Otto von Bismarck, right? He was the chancellor of Germany for a long time. I think he's the father. You know, Germany only became a country in the late 1800s. Believe it or not, you know, before World War I think German Americans, the biggest percentage of descendants in America is German. And German was like Spanish nowadays in the States. A lot of people spoke German, but World War I put an end to all that. So who knows? Was it planned? Did the English want to stop that? You never know. Because the US only really went into the war towards the end of the war, didn't it? The Fed says repo 75 billion or more. Does this mean repo bailout to infinity? Well, I saw that the overnight repo, actually, they increased it to 100 billion last week. And then they all, you know, it seems to have calmed down now, because I think only about 50 billion was taken up. This is how much they offer, you know, the 75 billion or the 100 billion. And then parties come in, and if they need 150 billion, that means that it was oversubscribed 1.5 times. But towards the end of this week, it kind of calmed down, but I don't think we're out of the woods yet. Orange Partisan says the stream is buffering too much. Yeah, I'm not sure why this is happening. I've got a cable here. I'm not using the Wi-Fi. I can't do anything about it. I'm sorry. AG Bull, why is Deutsche Bank still alive? I don't know. I mean, why is JP Morgan or RBS or all the big banks? They're still alive because the central banks are keeping them alive, life support. But it's not just Deutsche Bank, because if Deutsche Bank goes, they all go, all the too big to fail banks. So if you look at the New York Fed website, they have the list of people who deal with them. They call them primary dealers. Deutsche Bank is on that list. You have Japanese banks, French banks, German banks, British banks. So the Fed is actually lending money and bailing out the whole world right now. So U.S. taxpayers should protest. They should get the Fed ended. And I've got my End the Fed mug here in my that you can get in my Teespring store, End the Fed. John Morris says Deutsche Bank will go down in flames soon. Maybe. I mean, I've done videos about Deutsche Bank for the last few years, and they're dead men walking. Tom Taylor, could the Black Swan event end at all? Yeah, it could. But yeah, that's why let's remove this person here. It could. That's why, you know, in my opinion, for me, I have precious metals outside the system, no counterparty, because when the Black Swan hits, and it will be too late to get in. So that's why I try to do dollar cost averaging whenever I have extra fiat. I try to buy a little bit of gold and silver. I've been doing it for quite a long time. Yeah, Richard Powell, I saw that. Mark Carney raising the possibility of another cut, even if we get Brexit deal. I don't think it was Mark Carney. It was actually, what's his name? It was out yet. Michael Saunders, he's a member of the MPC, which is the equivalent of the FOMC in the US. And he's actually an outside member. He actually works as an economist for Citibank. Can you believe that? Like a Citibank a banker is actually deciding the rates in the UK. And he spoke last week and he said that we will probably see a cut next. The UK base rate is at 0.75%, which is relatively high compared to all the other European rates, which are negative. Lower than the US, of course, which is 1.75 to 2. So the UK is 1% higher. Ayush Gupta. Yeah, Ayush Gupta, I think you need to try to be outside the financial system as much as possible. Protect yourself with precious metals, gold and silver. But personally, I don't think it's the end of the world. I mean, I grew up in Brazil, and I did a video the other day. I spoke about all the different currencies. Since I was born in Brazil, they've had 8 different currencies. So life goes on, but you just need to be aware of these things, because the other thing I think they've done, general public, they've instilled this mentality that there's low inflation, that we have a danger of deflation. The only reason they do that is so they can keep printing, the paper, the fiat money that's backed by nothing. But one day people are gonna realize that, and the currencies are gonna sink even faster than they've been sinking already. And I've spoken about how all fiat currencies are sinking. And we can see now how most major currencies are making new lows against gold. And I say new lows because that's how we should look at it, because gold and silver, they don't move. They're very stable historically. It's the paper that moves, right? Alejandro Cruz, I want to get rid of central banks, access to Area 51. I think getting rid of the central banks is a big step. Everything else I think is important as well, but the most important is getting rid of central banks. I think that the public, the people should be in charge of their money, and the U.S. Constitution tells you how to do it, right? What we have now is a private central bank, hybrid, private and public, but with no accountability, controlling the money supply of the United States and the world. Yeah, so, and that's why politics is so screwed up as well, in my opinion, because these people are running the politics. Poonam Sherwatt, what you call your furies, a friend sitting on a sofa behind you, very good. Yeah, that's Billy. He's snoring tonight quite a bit as usual. Billy, he prefers silver. Billy is a silver bug, but yeah, that's right, David. He's still into silver. Richard Powell, I went into Marks and Spencer's on Friday, £4 for a sandwich. Yeah, I remember when you could get a meal deal at Marks and Spencer's for £3, so you could get a sandwich, a drink, and a packet of crisps for £3. So now £4 for just one sandwich. The Poltz family, hi, the Poltz family from Denmark. Luis Claudio from Rio, that's where I was from, in Brazil. Your analogy in comparing Brazil like Belgium and India was perfect. It's pretty much like that. Yeah, I mean, that it's always, my father always used to say that people used to tell him when he was younger that Brazil was the country of the future, and he always used to tell me it will always be the country of the future. Unfortunately, Brazil is mismanaged. Even though it's a wealthy country resource-wise, it's very corrupt, unfortunately. One interesting thing about Brazil, though, the last military coup in Brazil was in 1964, when I was born. And I only looked into this like a few years ago. And guess what? The Central Bank of Brazil was founded on December 31st, 1964. So that's very interesting, isn't it? A lot of people, everyone knows that it was CIA backed, the military coup. So Brazil didn't have a central bank until 1964, and that's really interesting. What do you think of a gold-silver ratio will go down to in the next few years? Well, I guess 32 is a next target. That's where it went in 2011. So that would be, an objective. And it could go even lower if we have if we're in a huge leg of a precious metals bull market. Who knows? We could go down to 16 or 20. Yeah, Billy is a shih tzu. No latest on Glint. Tomorrow, the reconciliation of the funds should finish. The administrators updated on Friday, and they said that the funds are all there, the ones that they have looked into, the funds and the gold. So we'll have to wait. Go into their website. Only the administrators right now can talk. In the US, it's up and running. It's not under administration. Yeah, I'm not sure how to say your name, the Arabic alphabet. I don't know, but yeah, how do they keep gold so low for so long? Well, because they trade gold as a currency. They leverage a lot. The central banks, they lease the gold to the bullion banks. The bullion banks borrow that gold, let's say 100 tons, and they actually sell 1,000 tons in paper into the market. That's how they do it. But they can't do it forever, or else they're going to run out of physical gold. And even the Bank of England and the Fed know that without gold, they're foobarred. So they understand that gold is very important. Why do bullion banks still exist? Why do JP Morgan, UBS, and the big banks on Wall Street have to trade gold? Well, because it's so important. And that's what people have to realize. If gold wasn't an important monetary asset, the banks wouldn't even care about gold, right? Nacho Fool, thank you for the super chat donation. Thank you. He says, keep up the good work, Mario. Thank you. Yeah, Billy is snoring. Yeah, he does like going out a lot. He was out earlier tonight running around in the garden. So he's not a lazy dog, by the way. Hi, Ben. Nice to see you. So the title of the live stream, because we've been on for almost 30 minutes, could Anglo-American mayhem trigger a currency collapse? What do I mean by Anglo-American mayhem? Well, I mean the special relationship, right? UK and US have been tied at the hip since World War II, or even World War I, if you want to go further back. And I personally think right now the political situation in the US and here in the UK is so polarized that I've never seen it before. I've been here since 1992. I've followed the US as well for quite a long time, and I haven't seen such polarity, between left and right as much as we're seeing now. The US is like Trump, and the Trump, everyone that hates Trump, love Trump. There's nothing in between. Same thing here in the UK with Brexiteers and the Remainers. I think it's not a good situation, and it would mean that people lose faith in the political system. And the political system, the dollar and sterling have been very stable, well, compared to other currencies, not to gold, but they've been relatively stable for over 100 years, right? But if you have political instability and vacuum, that could be quite serious. And there's a lot of analogies with Weimar Germany, and I've spoken about this earlier. I've marked some pages here. Let's read here. So I'm going to read this paragraph here about what was happening in Germany before the hyperinflation. It says, the Germany of 1923 was the Germany of Ludendorff, as well as of Steins, of Havenstein, as well of Hitler. For all their different worlds, the army of industry, finance, and politics, these four grotesque figures stalking the German stage may equally be represented as the villains of the play. So thank you, Sanjit, for the super chat. So what I'm talking about here now is like, you've got in finance, you've got the central banks. Now they've been acting crazily for the last 10 years, printing a lot of money. So that's the finance. We've got the politics. I'm not saying Trump is a Hitler, but you've got Trump and Boris Johnson, very divisive characters, right? What else have we got? We've got the mainstream media as well, very divisive. So very similar, some of it. It's not exactly the same. So that's one of the things. So let's DW. Mario, lots of people in the US don't like Trump, but he was the best of two. I agree. A lot of people, for example, in the UK, even people who voted to stay in the EU, they realized, even though they don't like, they don't want to leave the EU, they realize that what they're doing, the establishment, trying to block, the vote of 17.4 million people to leave, is wrong. And the same thing with Trump. You may not like him, but he was elected. And all that the Democrats seem to want to do is impeach him and get rid of him. They tried, the Russia hoax 1. They're now calling it hoax 2.0, right? The Ukraine thing. So I agree with you. You might not like him, but yeah, they're just trying to get rid of him. They're bad losers. They just want power back. I agree with you. And that's why I think things could unravel. And yeah, as I've said before, I haven't seen this polarization, in the US or the UK for never seen that in my lifetime. And you have to go back quite a long time to see something like that. Maybe it's related to the fourth turning. I don't know if any of you guys heard about that book, The Fourth Turning, that you get like every 80 years, very big changes. Like you had the civil U.S. Revolution, 1776, 1780, and then another 80 years you had the Civil War, 1860, and then another 80 years you had World War II, 1940, and then another 80 years is 2020, right? So we're almost there for this fourth turning. And a lot of times they say that in the fourth turning, there's some important political figures. So you had Washington, the founding fathers, Lincoln, Roosevelt, and is it going to be Trump now and Boris Johnson? Who knows? Pune, we're heading towards economic slowdown all over the world. Yeah, another interesting article I read today about the U.S. economy is that in the last 6 weeks or so, a lot of economic data in the U.S. has picked up. And one of the reasons why that happens, like every year, like in August and September, things pick up, is because it's the end of the fiscal year. And what the government agencies who still have money left, what they do, they try to spend as much as they can so they don't have any money left, so that their budgets won't be cut the next fiscal year. So it's an interesting article. It's on Zero Hedge. It says why the U.S. decoupling miracle ends in 72 hours. Well, that's because it's going to be October 1st, right? It's so the author, I'll put the link here, says spend it or lose it, right? So the same thing happens here in the UK, in the local councils. The fiscal year here is like April. So you notice like in March, February, March here in the UK, they're doing loads of road works that you don't need because they want to spend the money so that they get the same budget. So yeah, I expect the US economy to slow down going to the end of the year. Zipper Fixer says, hit the like button. Yeah, that would be good. Some people say, why does it matter if you hit the like button? Actually, my wife actually told me the other day, the reason why you should hit the like button is if you like it, is because the algorithms will keep you informed about the videos or the channels that you've liked. If you don't like them, the algorithms won't know. So that's why it's important to hit the like button. If you like my channel, of course. Yeah, Observator. I have a book, Hjalmar Shart. You know, his middle name was Hjalmar Horace Greeley Shart. I think he lived in New York. His father emigrated to the U.S. in the 1800s. They moved back to Germany. Yeah, Carol Quigley, good book too. I've got his book as well, Tragedy and Hope. Bill Clinton's professor at Georgetown. Germany is in a recession. Yeah, they are. I would say, though, that Germany runs a budget surplus, you see. The US is running a 5% deficit. So no wonder the US isn't in a recession. So Germany is not drowning in debt like the US. I know Deutsche Bank isn't doing well, but Deutsche Bank, I think, and Commerzbank only hold 12% of German deposits. German banking system is very decentralized. Some people think that Germany is just Deutsche Bank, but that's not true. I think Deutsche Bank would hurt more like Wall Street in the city of London more than it would hurt Germany if it went down. Richard, our USA can't rule the world anymore. You're right. And I think, you know, the having the reserve currency is what has led to all the debt, because every country's tried to underprice and sell things to the US because they can't function without dollars, right? So what that's led to is that's led to all the trade deficits that the US runs. It's led to all, you know, it's made it easy for the US government to borrow money because other countries, you know, they need to park their dollars in treasuries. But it can't keep going forever. It's called the Triffin paradox, right? That's what it is. Yeah, I think the multipolar world is going to be what we'll get. Hopefully, we won't get a new world order. You know, the globalists running everything. Shane Sturgis, Corbyn will stand as prime minister by the end of the week. Yeah, that's the other thing that's going on here. It's really bad. I've never seen it like this. Looks like the UK government is investigating three guys. Oliver Letwin, who's conservative. Hillary Benn, it's a guy. He's not a woman. He's a man. And Dominic Grieve. They supposedly dealt with a foreign country when they're drawing up this Benn law or Benn rule, which is the surrender bill, the Benn bill, right? Which says that the UK has to negotiate, that it can't leave without a deal, right? And now they're saying that these guys dealt, you know, they were conspiring with the French government, which They can't, because it's the UK government that has to deal with foreign countries. So there's all this going on, and there's talk now as well that Labour, the Scottish National Party, and the Liberal Democrats are going to try to bring down Boris Johnson's government and have Corbyn as interim prime minister, delay Brexit again. But the thing is, I'm not sure they'll get the votes, because they need the Labour Party, Scottish National Party, Liberal Democrats, and then they need another 11 votes. They might not get that. So it's a mess, the political situation in the UK. Isabella, is there a kind of plan for Europe after the financial reset, which will come? Well, Europe is tied at the hip with the US monetary system, the central banks. One thing I heard speaking to someone in the city last week is that the problem with the UK leaving, I'm not saying myself it's a problem, but for the EU, is that once the UK leaves and people see how, things are not going to be the end of the world, a lot of other EU countries would want to leave. And this guy told me that apparently the Dutch want to leave the EU, which I've found that quite surprising. So that's quite interesting. 1894, the U.S. surplus was gone. Treasury U.S. has never had a surplus since then. Yeah, and I think it was that year that there was a crisis, U.S. Treasury crisis, and J.P. Morgan helped the U.S. Treasury, got some loans. And I think that's why J.P. Morgan is so important bank, because they bailed out the U.S. Treasury back then. And I think the last time the U.S. didn't have a national debt was under Andrew Jackson, I think 1837, after he did not renew the charter of the Second Bank of the United States. I agree, Observator, that Brexit and also Trump, it's all a dog and pony show, but they're going to use that to flush the debt away. For the last 10 years, since the financial crisis, I've been wondering, how can they keep this going? They can't. The debt is getting more and more insurmountable. Not only the government debt, but the corporate debt. There's no other way out. They need an excuse to flush the system. We can't keep carrying this debt, and they're going to use this. And that's why I think it's important. That's why that's the title of my book. Not my book, my live stream. Could Anglo-American mayhem trigger a currency collapse? And that will put the spotlight away from the real problem, which is the debt, the monetary system. Hopefully they won't be able to hide it. And that's why I do my videos, and I have my channel, is to wake people up to the fact that it's all because of the debt and the monetary system that we've had. Observator, did you hear the analysis of Rob Kirby and Greg Hunter's concerning all the corruption? I haven't. I saw the thumbnail. I haven't. I know Rob Kirby. I've listened to him quite a bit. I'll probably listen to him afterwards, after I finish here. Try to get some more questions here. Bill Titswell, artificial intelligence is the coming world order that will manage the whole show. Yeah, that is worrying, Bill. I agree. Facial recognition. The Chinese WePay, isn't it? It's called WePay. It's worrying. Like in Australia now, there's a big move to ban cash. It might happen. It's not the end of the world. There are ways. Human beings, we're adapt quite a bit. There are always ways to try to stay as sovereign as possible. We might have to play the game, but there are ways, like being outside the system, having tangible goods in your possession, well stashed away. That's one of the ways to stay, to be outside this artificial intelligence world. And sometimes this artificial intelligence is actually great, the technologies, but it's also very dangerous. So hopefully they won't succeed as as much as people fear. Yeah, Jeff Brown, I agree. The EU is a CIA project. I've spoken about that before. John DeGlass says he had a blast. And good night. Well, I'm glad, and have a good night as well. Richard Auray, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. You are like Murray Rothbard if he had the internet. Well, I like Murray Rothbard's books. I've recommended them before. I particularly like, what has government done to our money? The case for, 100% gold dollar. I also have his book on the Great Depression. And yeah, I've been following the Austrian School of Economics for almost 20 years. Socialist cancer, Islamic Ebola. Bible says cashless society is coming. Finally is the RFID microchip, which people are already getting. Yeah, even I think in Sweden, some people are volunteering to get chipped, which is crazy. Getting a little warm in here because I have to keep the windows closed because of the sound. Gogi Bow 66, whether UK stays or leaves and whether Trump or Biden win the election, there will be significant turmoil, even violence. The polarization will drag the US and UK down. I think so too. If they can, the more they delay Brexit, the more uncertainty there is. Excuse me, there's a lot of uncertainty in the US as well, and that's not good. And the Fed. I've got a mug as well. Shut down, retired the old lady of Threadneedle Street and shut down the bank. That's my and the Fed for the Bank of England. Old lady of Threadneedle Street is the nickname for the Bank of England. You can find these mugs in my Teespring store if you're interested. There's T-shirts as well, and Billy mugs. Dave Humphreys, do you have a prediction for how this will play out? Are we adding for recession, hyperinflation, and other holding? Yeah, it's difficult to, the hyperinflation will come at the end. I think we're already in a recession in the UK, in the US. It's coming very soon. I think, yeah, mining stocks could do very well, but you need to be careful as well because let's say you have mining stocks that have done well, but the company that you hold your mining stocks with collapses, you need to be careful. I would just hold mining stocks as speculation with money that you can afford to lose. I would stay very safe outside the system with precious metals, physical. That's my opinion. Hey, Lord Humongous, nice to see you here, one of my moderators. Great to see you, Lord. Super Silver Billy is here. Yeah, he's asleep and snoring. So all's well with the world. Oliver Bridge part at the seams. Well, yeah, the UK has an unwritten constitution, but I agree with you. recommend you probably listened to already Dave Starkey. David, he's a historian, and he's been on some YouTube channels, and he's very good. He's explaining what's happening now. He thinks this is the worst constitutional political crisis since the they chopped off the king's head. Was it Charles the First? And Cromwell in mid 1600s. He thinks it's the worst crisis since then, because basically Parliament is betraying the people they're supposed to represent, the general public. So yeah, I recommend, even for Americans who want to know what's going on in the UK, Google David Starkey or Dave Starkey. He's a historian. He's warning people about what's going on here. Lynn Gordon, you have been identified as possibly bearing some culpability. In quotes. Don't know what that means. Yeah, we are in uncharted waters. Yeah, Oliver Bristol has been listening to David Starkey. Yeah, my wife was listening to him the other day. I had heard of David Starkey. I didn't realize he was like defending, the Brexit vote as much as he is. And it makes sense. People voted to leave. We were told back then by David Cameron, the Prime Minister, and others, that it's like in the US, don't know electoral college votes, but they still keep going at him. Now it's the hoax 2.0, the Ukraine, right? But I don't think they'll get him. I don't think he's gonna. I think Trump is gonna stay. Connection is unstable. It says here on my screen. It might be buffering. I hope not. Yeah, it is. I'll take a few more questions and then we'll call it a day. Observator 5G. Yeah, I think 5G is what they want to bring. It's dangerous. 5G. It's completely different than 4G. It's a whole different wavelength or whatever you want to call it. I'm not, but yeah, it's going to be everywhere because they want everything to be the Internet of Things, right? Everything will be connected to the internet, but it could be great. Technology is great. The problem is that people abuse it. Government abuses technology, but it could also, like Isabella says, it could be very unhealthy. A lot of the companies that are developing 5G, they haven't done any work or research on how it could affect people. So yeah, I'm not really too convinced about it, and I think it could be dangerous, 5G. But are we going to be able to stop them? Who knows? Let's, another analogy, I think technology is great. For example, I think these payment cards are really good and, how can I say, convenient. But there are problems. Look at what's happening at Glint. And we have to wait and see what happens. But for it, he used to sail a lot. He used to do a lot of racing. He sailed for people who had big boats, and he was the navigator. And so he knew how to use a sextant and things like that. But I remember in the 70s when he bought his own boat, many of you might not know, GPS technology came out in the 70s, and my dad put the GPS on his boat, but he still had the sextant because the GPS might not work, but a sextant and knowing how to use it is always, so that's how I see gold and silver. They're real money. And yes, these payment cards are really great, convenient, but don't depend on them completely. That's the way I see it. It's a little bit like the the GPS and the navigational instruments on a ship or in a boat. They're very good until they work, but if there's a problem, you need to know how to use a sextant, or like my dad used to be able to use in the sun to navigate. All right, well, a couple more questions, and then we're almost to the hour mark. I don't want to make it too long. I'll take a couple more questions from the viewers. We need some more thumbs up, don't we? We've only got 91. And Brown, I completely acknowledge technology doesn't change human nature, and that's why people keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. All right, everyone. Just one more question. One or two more questions. I'll stay on a little more until 1 hour. What happens to the mortgage market in a monetary collapse, Mario? Well, you would think that you'd go scot-free if you think that the bankers always they're going to take your pound of flesh, So I wouldn't, if there's a collapse, I'm going to be scot-free of my mortgage. So the best thing that I've tried to do is get out of debt, even if you think, the currency is going to collapse. And we know the other side of the currency now is the debt, right? But when they reorganize the system, you can be almost sure that they're going to make sure that your debt is not going to be like written off too much. It will be written off for them, but not for a great thing. So you never know. But it would be great if it was written off, right? But I wouldn't hold my breath, so to speak. Bitcoin is at 6,000. Is it? Let's have a look. I didn't realize. I thought I saw the last time I saw it. I've got it at 8,000 Bitcoin. I'm not sure where you're looking at. The other thing I'd like to say about Bitcoin, the cryptocurrencies have been in a bear market for almost 2 years now, but I don't think they're not gonna disappear. So we've had these kinds of cycles in the past already, and I think if you've done your homework and you know about cryptocurrencies and the blockchain, you should hold on to them. I'm holding on to my cryptocurrencies. I'm even thinking of maybe getting a little more Bitcoin. So there you go. Thank you for showing up, for participating in the live. Thank you who contributed through the super chat donation. I appreciate it. And thank you for all of you guys, for following me and watching my videos and commenting. And have a great rest of the weekend. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.